Hi, this is Jim from Vaudevisuals. I'm here with Marc Hartzman, author, journalist, and collector, the author of American Sideshow, and most recently, We Are Not Alone, the topic being UFOs. Marc has written extensively for many, many journals: Mental Floss, Weird Historian, Huffington Post, AOL, and the list goes on. And I'll share his resume and bio in this blog post. But let's hear about your experiences interviewing all these delightful, eccentric sideshow people.
Oh, it's so much fun getting to interview all these amazing performers. This book went back to, I guess I started early 2003. Like I said, it came out in 2005, and I was just, it's amazing to be able to connect with so many truly remarkable people. And once I got to know them, they would refer me to other people. And I think what really helped along with that was they could see that I was writing this as someone who was genuinely interested in the subject matter. I wasn't. I think at that time, a lot of books on this topic were written by professors, from a sociological aspect and what's wrong with sideshow and why are people being exploited and how terrible is that. And I didn't like those kind of books that much. Like I wanted a book that was just sharing these amazing stories about these people who, to me, they were all stories of triumph. I mean, for the most part, people who overcame all kinds of, you know, difficult conditions that they were born with, right? Especially in that era, 19th century, early 20th century, when there weren't a whole lot of options for you. And instead, they got to be proud of who they were. They got to earn a living. They got to find love. They got to have friends and camaraderie. They got to travel the world. All these experiences and opportunities that they wouldn't have had otherwise. They were the stars of the stage. And if it wasn't that, they were going to be, in many cases, they may have had families who were ashamed. They would have been hidden away. They could have been institutionalized, and that's not a better life. So those were the kinds of stories I want to be able to share, and just who these people were, and share their truly amazing stories. And getting into this, this all began with a zine I started publishing when I was in college called Backwash, and I started writing about sideshows by around like the 12th issue or so, just because I started finding it really interesting. I'd always kind of liked the topic, I mean, since I was a kid, but then I started writing about it around that time. And then what really got me going was when I visited the Freakatorium in New York City that was run by Johnny Fox. So he's on one of the covers of the magazine. There he is.
Oh,
And I was just, this was like, I don't know, 1999 or so when I went in there, 98. And I was just so amazed by this collection. And he started swallowing a sword right away. It's such a nice guy, just amazing. And so I did the story for Backwash. I ended up doing a larger version of that for Bizarre magazine, published out of the UK at the time. Did a bunch of articles for them. And then I just started meeting more and more people within the sideshow community. And I just was in awe of what they were doing. And like I said, I loved all the history already. So that's what really led to me having, I think, the connections to be able to do American Sideshow. And it's interesting, like looking back, I thought at that time I had access to lots of research materials, through the internet. But like now it's amazing how much more there is. Like, oh
that's
my
true.
God.
That's true.
Like I was thrilled if I could find like a surviving family member of someone, and now they're like all over Facebook, but back then it was hard to kind of track people down. I would go to libraries and go through folders of clippings. It was a bit more old school, but still with a little bit of newer technology, obviously.
Yeah.
But times have certainly changed since 2003 and 2004. I did lots of traveling. Like I loved going down to Gibsonton and meeting with Ward Hall and Chris Christ, and little Pete was there then. We met with Bruce Snowden, came up to Ward's house, photographed them all, um, went to dinner with them. Spent like full days with them because Ward's got stories, which were just fascinating. And then we went out to the West Coast. We went with Bobby Reynolds, met George the Giant out there.
Wow.
Um, and Bobby was incredible too, sharing so many stories. At one point, at that point, we actually brought a scanner with us on the plane.
Nice.
And at one point, Bobby said, I gotta go get my wife at the hair salon. He's like, here's a box of stuff. Go through what you want, scan it all, whatever you want. Go through it. I'll be back in an hour.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
wow, thanks. So my wife and I were going through stuff, the scanner. This is cool, and
Oh.
it was such a fun experience. He showed us around his ranch and everything. we went down to Seaside Heights, New Jersey, met up with Ken Hark and the Brothers Grimm Sideshow, and met with everybody in the group then. That afternoon at the place they were all staying, and then went to the show that night, at the boardwalk, which was a ton of fun. Obviously went down to Coney Island, met with Dick Ziggett and the crew back in the 2003 cast.
Nice.
So yeah, it was so much fun meeting them all. I actually met, one of the coolest experiences was meeting Melvin Burkhart. That was for the magazine I just showed you, the Backwash Scene, and we met him in September 2001. I guess like a week before 9/11. Basically, it was Labor Day weekend.
Wow.
And he brought us into his mobile home just outside of Gibtown, and we spent like 2 hours with him. And he's 94 years old, and such a wonderful, delightful man. He was doing sleight of hand magic, like right in front of my face. These 94-year-old hands. And I'll never forget, he did a card trick where I picked a card, put it in my hand, covered it like that, and then my wife picked a card and she covered it, and then he did something with her, and then he said, "Okay, now open your hand." I opened my hand, and it was her card. Like, I don't know what you just did, but you didn't move my hands.
Wow, amazing.
So he did his famous dice trick in front of us, which was incredible, and of course he did the Hema Blockhead routine, which was so cool to see live, and we have that recorded, which is really wonderful. But yeah, it was amazing.
That's a great experience.
After that,
wow, and all the traveling you did to do research on the book. Well, I mean, the research, that process of doing the research was just as much fun as writing the book, if not more.
Yeah.
I mean, right?
I love it. I mean, part of the fun of doing these kinds of books is, I think you mentioned earlier that I'm also a collector. So these books are like, they give you an excuse, like, well, now I have to go travel, for this thing, and I have to buy this cabinet card on eBay. I need it for the book. Now it's research. It's not just like for fun.
Yes.
So it's nice to kind of get both out of it.
I was doing the same thing when I was working on the Rose's Royal Midget book. I was buying postcards, souvenir postcards from the midget companies from back in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, And then I have quite a collection now. It's like, I mean, the book is done, but I still have these wonderful postcards from that era, which is really a delight,
Absolutely.
But, yeah. So that's great. So tell me, what else did I wanted to ask you about? Tell me about the publishing company you had that you've done a few books with. Tell us about the books and the company.
The one I started?
Yeah.
So I started my own publishing venture in 2020 during COVID called Curious Publications. And mostly what I've been doing is just republishing old public domain books, which something I've been thinking about for years. I just finally had the time to do it when nothing was happening in the world. So I started playing with it, just all these wonderful old obscure books from the late 1800s or early 1900s. And I would redesign them, lay them out as nicely as I possibly could, clean everything up. And, it's just online for sale.
Amazing.
Through any online bookseller. And then I started I also want to do some more original stuff as well. So one project I did, I was really excited to finally do this. This is the scrapbook of Agnes Schwarzenbacher, the Rubber Skin Lady. And this is her entire Sideshow scrapbook.
Oh my gosh. From
like the 1930s. And so her great niece had reached out to me a few years after American Sideshow came out. And I didn't even see the message for like 6 months. It was like hidden on Facebook.
Huh.
I wrote an introduction to it as well. And so she had told me about the scrapbook that she had. No one in their family wanted it. Circus World in Wisconsin didn't want it, which was weird. So I had been wanting to do something. I did like a Ripley's Radio talk with Tim O'Brien years back about it. And then I wrote an article for Mental Floss about it. But I always wanted to do this. I always wanted to just reproduce the whole thing. So her husband was also out of work during COVID. So he said, "I can take all the photos for you." Awesome. He did a great job with that. I put it all together, wrote up the introduction, wrote up bios on the performers, and printed up a limited edition book, 100 copies. They're all hand numbered. So still have a few of those available. But
very cool.
But that was just a joy to finally get done. It was like, like 11 years in the making or something.
Yeah,
So
but
I got that done.
that's a great
Yeah.
project. What a great project that is. It's interesting that you started your publishing company during COVID because that's exactly the same time I started my publishing
Oh yeah.
company.
Yeah. I'm trying to keep it going, but I also work with Quirk Books. That's who you mentioned. We Are Not Alone. So this is the third book I've done with them. They do a wonderful job. I'm working on a fourth book for them right now, and I'm also working on another book with Dan Meyer, the Sword Swallower, on the history of sword swallowing. So it's called To the Hilt: A Sword Swallower's History of Sword Swallowing, and we've gotten bios of about 70 so far, about 70 sword swallowers from history,
Wow.
and tons of photos. So that's been a lot of fun. It's been kind of fun going back to Sideshow. I feel like everything I've written about since American Sideshow branches out of Sideshow in one way or another, just in terms of the weird and unusual. Like, to me, it all stems from that.
Yeah.
Like, I wrote a book called Chasing Ghosts, which gets into the paranormal and spiritualism, and I just feel like all that stuff is just close. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like a
Yeah.
little another branch over here. So
Exactly.
now
Exactly.
I feel like I'm coming home.
So the book on the sword swallowing is called what again?
It's called To the Hilt: A Sword Swallower's History of Sword Swallowing.
And it's expected out in February, hopefully.
Shooting for next February, yeah. So we want to hit for World Sword Swallowing Day
Oh yeah,
2025.
that's right. That's great.
Yeah,
Great. Well, Mark, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, and we'll stay in touch.
absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.